Good afternoon. We're here on Poet to Poet, Writer to Writer with my guest, Mike Ansara. How you doing, Mike?
I'm good. Thank you, Doug, for having me.
And Mike has just finished, has just released a new book with Kelsey Books, I believe, What Remains. Basically, I mean, what does remain? You're
75.
You're 75.
First book at 75.
So what remains? More books? I mean, what is...
We'll see. We'll see. You know, this one only took me about 18 years to produce and get written, and I'm not a fast writer, so you know, it's a really good month if I produce one poem.
Okay.
So I'm not one of those churn 'em out poets.
No. And it is your first chapbook, and you know, like you were telling me, writing, you don't have a lot of confidence about writing, but you know, as a political organizer, activist, and all this, you do. And so it's a new sort of thing for you, right? I mean, it's second.
Yeah, no, it's
second act, right?
It's basically something that I've only been doing, you know, starting in my late 50s, early 60s, and got serious about 15 years ago. I'm now 75, and I was blessed to do a series of workshops with Barbara Helfgott Hyatt. With Joan,
she has a new book coming out. Yeah.
And with Joan Houlihan.
Okay.
And then the absolutely wonderful Lucy Brock-Bordeaux.
Who passed away.
Who passed away, and such a loss.
But in fact, you say that some of your significant mentors, Richard Hoffman, who I've interviewed many times, and Joan Houlihan, and the others you were mentioning. I mean, what do you think if you had it? I know this is a difficult question, but what's the important lesson you think if you had to narrow it down, what do you think the most important lesson you learned from these folks was?
You know, I think, I don't know if I can boil it down to one, but there are a couple of obvious ones. One is revision. You know, when I started, I sort of thought I found poems, you know, and wow, look at this. And they taught me the hard way that you need to revise, you know, 30, 40, 50 times, throw out 75, 80% of it, start again. The second thing is to get grandiosity and sentimentality out of the poems. You know, I'm a very emotive, romantic kind of person, you know, and so
can't poems be romantic?
They can be romantic, but they have to be concise, and they have to be well crafted, and Lucy in particular was on me for my sort of sloppy sentimentality. Just cut it out. Yeah. So, you know, and to learn craft, which at an advanced age, frankly, is harder. One of my regrets in my life is that I didn't get serious about writing in my 20s, when I think I could have mastered the craft significantly.
But you might have been writing in your 20s and then regretted that you didn't become politically active.
That's true. We did have things to do.
Right.
Civil rights movement, anti-war, Students for Democratic Society, and community organizing. I had a rich life.
I had my draft number in 1973 that the war was over, and thanks to folks like you who made it, I wouldn't be in some field.
Yeah, no, I mean, I look back on those days, and I wish I was smarter, but I certainly don't regret what we were doing.
Right. Now, we were talking about the content, the contest was a poem about you. I like that. There was a poem about his father and son's urination, and obviously, it's a bit of a stream of consciousness. but can you talk a bit about the germ of the idea for the poem?
So, you know, it was an actual experience.
Right.
My son and I were by a lake in the Adirondacks, and he was probably, 9, 10, 11, somewhere in that. And I stopped. We both stopped. And it was this moment of the sun was beginning to set, and it was almost a moment of reverence, except that both of us really needed to pee. So I say in the poem, we stopped as if to pray, but peed instead.
It's a bonding experience.
And I just was struck. I mean, there was just the relationship with him and father and son, older man, younger man, visible in the arc of our piss. Mine wasn't very strong, and his was marvelously strong, and he noticed it, and was thrilled in this sort of undeclared competition that he was so victorious. And it just seemed to me to catch a lot about fathers and sons, about aging, about youth, and a small detail that said a lot.
Yeah, I remember I wrote a poem. Urination, I guess, is a good thing, because I remember I was sitting in a cafe and I watched this mother lead her son into the bathroom. I says, from the very start, they're teaching us,
Right. Right.
So that poem was based on that.
And that poem, The Contest, is clearly one of the ones that people like of mine a great deal.
Okay. It seems that a recurrent theme in your work, in What Remains, is you see these, you're observing these much younger people, boys and other things, and they're dreaming in their dreams and things like that, and you sit back and realize that that's not part of your life anymore, but you can appreciate it. I mean, is that something?
No, I mean, I'm baffled by how old I am.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it just seems inconceivable to me that I should be 75, but I'm also acutely aware of it, and aware of, in a sense, both all that I've lost and all that I've found. I think about my writing. I'm trying as hard as I can to distill my experiences, to wrestle with, I know it's trite, but to wrestle with the mysteries of life, and to distill them into something worth reading that might remain.
And I remember the poem about a boy in the pool, and how he went to the bottom of the pool. A little younger than the Graduate scene, but when he went to the bottom of the pool and he imagined himself as a otter or something like that, and it brings back, when you're fresh, that's what we try to do, right? When we write a poem, we try to go back to that innocence. We don't have all this baggage and things like that, and experiencing things for the first time. You agree?
Yes, no, and I think we're always going back. I have a poem that's not in that, it's not been published yet, but I hope it will be, just a short little poem, which I call Expulsion, because I think we're always going back. We're always trying to find our way back into those moments of innocence and of grace, which, over the course of our life are so rare.
Now, you were a member of the SDS, and for people too young to know, the Students for a Democratic Society, that was, a counterculture, politically active group that was protesting the Vietnam War. You had Abby Hoffman and all those folks. Well, they were more yippies than SDS, right?
Right.
But do you view poetry as a kind of subversive activity at all?
I do, but I need to be careful in how I explain it. I think that poetry requires of you a leap of faith and a leap of imagination, and to enter a poem is to see the world through somebody else's eyes. Mm-hmm. And I think in this day and age, the empathy implicit in that is profoundly subversive of our society, its economic order, its political order, its cultural order. And so I think in the sense that poetry requires you, demands of you to see the world through someone else's eyes, it is profoundly subversive.
You can't stop this, right? I mean,
what can I say? You know, I am old, but I don't think I've mellowed that much. I think I'm a nicer person.
Rage Against the Dying.
Rage.
You know, I was only like 13 years old, but when Bobby Kennedy was when was he shot?
68.
Yeah, so I was only 13 years old. I didn't realize that that he was being maybe I misread the poem. That he was being driven by a film producer.
He was.
Okay.
He was being driven.
Why wouldn't he be with Secret Service?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But the poem that I wrote about his death.
Yeah.
John Frankenheimer, the movie maker, director, drove him to the hotel, and on the way, they had the conversation that's in the poem, in which, among other things, Bobby said to Frankenheimer, "Slow down. Life is short. Slow down."
Wow. And that influenced Frankenheim, those movies after.
Yeah, and in fact, it made it harder for him to make movies. Actually, he was so traumatized that he had been making big Technicolor extravaganzas and had a hard time continuing.
Well, they say great pain brings great art, but maybe not in that case.
Not always. Not always.
Now, you also, we know this for years, and founded the great organization, Mass Poetry. How have you seen it evolve over the years? How many years has it been now?
So it was started in 2009.
Right.
So it's 13 years old. I think it's, in its first years, Doug, it was really me and a couple of friends, January O'Neill and a few others.
Who went on to big things.
Went on to great things, and a wonderful poet, who I think is finally getting her due. And
she's been for a while, really, actually. Yeah. But anyway. I remember when she came to Endicott College. This is when she said she was working as a writer for Babson or something.
Right.
She says, "I really want to teach. I really want to teach." And next thing I knew, she was a tenured professor.
Salem State.
Salem State.
So now Mass Poetry really is a sort of institution. It's got its own staff. It's got an expanding board. I play a much less significant role. I'm just a board member now, and one voice among many. And as with virtually every organization, it's grappling with issues of diversity and how to make sure that it serves and is in itself diverse. And they're just launching a terrific new program with young poets, basically a spoken word program that I think is going to have a significant impact, particularly in the Boston high schools. And it's thrilling to see it.
It's much needed.
And the Poetry Festival is back. Every other year, so it'll be this spring. It's be in Salem this spring.
Right. It started out in Lowell.
Started out in Lowell.
Yeah.
Lowell was fantastic. They were the only people who, on very short notice, would say, "We have a cultural infrastructure, and let's do a poetry festival," and they did. And now it's been in Salem, and it'll be back this spring.
Wonderful. Listen, I want you to read a few poems from your book. I know you wrote your book.
I did.
We can buy it at the usual places.
Amazon,
right?
Directly from Kelsey.
And you having a reading soon?
I am having a couple. I'm going to have one at the new Grub Street Center for Creative Writing.
Does Mass Poetry have an alliance with Grub Street?
Yes, we work closely. There's a really active partnership in that center. It's a wonderful center. Unfortunately,
I haven't gotten down there yet.
Because of COVID, it really has not blossomed yet, but it's just beginning as COVID recedes.
Just right across from the North Station, right?
No, it's in the Seaport.
Oh, which is
So it's on what used to be the Fan Pier, and the city of Boston did a wonderful thing. When they gave the development rights to the developer, they insisted that 2 floors, a significant chunk of 2 floors, be devoted to a cultural effort. And Grub Street and Mass Poetry applied. Grub Street was the lead partner, Mass Poetry the minor partner. And it's a wonderful center, and now Porter Square Books has a bookstore in it. They're developing a cafe. There's a small stage for readings. The Bagel Bard should do some readings down there.
You know, years ago, I interviewed Eve Bridberg.
Yeah.
And where I interviewed her, she was just putting up signs on trees. They were good, and I was interviewing her. Kids were screaming in the background. You know, she lived in Somerville, and her kids were screaming in the background and all that.
Right.
I remember that now it's such a big thing.
No, it's big, and it's absolutely wonderful.
Yes. Read a few poems.
Well, I think we're going to have to do the contest then. I think, right?
What do you? Oh, the contest, poem. Right. Pisser of a poem.
The contest. My son sprints, all unpracticed nonchalance, to match my stride at the lake's warmed edge. Silent against the coming of cooling dark, standing together as if to pray, we pee. Mine falls short, yellowed, diminishing, with a rustling hiss, vanishing into the sponge, decay of bark, soft rust of pine. The last veins of bronzed light outline the profound arc of sparkling piss as he starts to sway, widening as he swivels, side to side, with unrestrained, enduring force. Eyes delight, tossing his wolf-thick hair, his delicately boned chest bare to the low sun of summer's end.
The arc of life.
So we'll go in a very different direction. Race is just a story. In the alley or lewd casino, every game its dealer, every story its teller, in caves, in cotton fields, on playing fields, while plowing fields, in ice storms, dust storms, monsoons, typhoons, fictions, the shape of your head, the meaning of your lips, the curl, the color, the kink, the length, the sun, the cold, the light, the dark. Race is just a story. But because of it, the shackle, the whip, the brand, the noose, the bullet, endless songs of mourning, rising like soft smoke in the evening sky. Race is just a story. Every story its teller. Every salt tear tastes the same.
You know, the form of the poem is reminiscent of Penske's The Shirt. Have you ever read that?
I love that poem,
and
The Shirt.
So I see some influence in there, right?
Yeah. No, and you know, I love his poetry, and I also love everything that he's done for poetry.
He was a good poet laureate.
Yes, he's amazing.
I was in his America's Favorite Poem anthology. You remember that years ago?
Yeah.
I did Robert Lowell.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did a little introduction to Robert Lowell.
So many great poets.
Yeah.
So many. I think also we're living in a time of just amazing poets. Just amazing. I'll read
one more.
Okay. On the death in Alaska of Marie Smith Jones, last speaker of EAC. Water is never lost. It falls, flows, blows, mists, again to fall, now as rain, now as snow. The liquid of language can come to nothing. Words, sound, song, strung along the taut tendon of 10,000 years, vanish as if wind-blown over winter. Flecks of ice running over the crusted roof of the Copper River. Speechless, light lets go. Gone the tongue, gone caribou beyond counting, ptarmigan and fox, white against the white, years of pestilence and pox. gone the feel of fat against the top of the tongue.
Well, thank you very much.